Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. We are here live from the Chantilly, Virginia studios at Kardec Radio. And we're happy to finally do a program on fertility treatments. Many people have requested that we address this very important issue, and we're finally here. And to help us understand the whole 9 yards of the Spiritist take on fertility treatments, we're inviting Dr. Marco Magalhães, who is a DDS, PhD, and now faculty at the University of Toronto. He's also a Spiritist who has been helping many Spiritist organizations, including he's a member of the Toronto Spiritist Society. Soon after the message you're going to listen and the break, I'm going to open the line to talk to Marco Magalhães.
Keep your optimism.
The dispirited companion who walks by your side may be facing a crucial ordeal. That friend of yours who slipped into delinquency may have tried hard to avoid crime. The other one who succumbed to vice may have fought against it but was not strong enough. The co-worker who discontinued service might have tried to stay in his place but was unable to comply. The friend who suddenly became your enemy may not have been able to overcome his pernicious tendencies. People acting negatively need understanding rather than criticism. Some might have wished to act differently, but could not help themselves. A few others may be secretly trying to fight their negative drives. Many may have already acted as anonymous heroes, but are now in disgrace. All of them need a new opportunity to prove themselves, that they can change their behavior. They may never ask for help. Still, they should be given a new chance. Consider the positive side of people's actions and forget their weaknesses. Do not reject them. It is easy to fraternize with nice and diligent people always willing to cooperate and serve. It is agreeable to enjoy the company of worthy persons. But they also have problems of which you probably know nothing about. The earth is both a school and a hospital for unhealthy souls. Nobody living on earth now is an exception from this rule. It is useless to seek the company of angels, since they are not incarnate on earth now. All people on this planet bear the same characteristics as yourself. They suffer, have their own limitations, and they want to live in peace, and they dream with happiness. Try not to comment on the deficiency of others. If you cannot help them, keep silent and excuse them when they hurt you. Do not be disheartened by their behavior. If you know what you are looking for and are willing to serve, go on acting as you know best, and be gentle to all who come your way. Do not harbor grief or disappointment within your heart. Be an optimist. Help those who have gone astray back to the right road. Abandoned and betrayed, Jesus was never disheartened. Never did he display resentment. He was the great winner of all the battles that life reserved for him.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Getting to the Light, Spiritist Therapy for Discarnate Spirits is a small book that offers guidance to Spiritist practitioners and Spiritist counselors. Purchase your copy at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
If you missed out on a previous shows, no worries. We have an on-demand section of all previous shows and interviews. Go to our website at www.kardecradio.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Help prevent suicide by reading and sharing these books with others. 2 great books are available to help in this Kardec Radio campaign to prevent suicide. Suicide, All You Need to Know, by the international Spiritist speaker Richard Simonetti. You can buy your copy at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com. Also, Memoirs of a Suicide by the medium Yvonne Pereda. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Kardec Radio now offers more programs during the week and weekends. Every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can follow the beautiful program God at Home with Francisca Kranz and the British Spiritist community. They will brighten your days by doing a God at Home meeting wherever you are in the world, while teaching you how to do the same in your own home with your family and friends. Every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will hear incredibly inspirational Spiritist talks directly broadcasted by Spiritist Network. They will be true educational moments to carry out to immortality. Every Saturday, live interviews, Bridging Health and Spiritism with the host Dr. Vanessa Anceloni. You may ask questions to the interviewed guests by calling 858-769-4705. And every Sunday, tune in to Spiritist Awareness at Kardec Radio. You will hear a series of segments on a diversity of Spiritist topics. Kardec will broadcast the Spiritist Moment with Kirsten DeMello, the reading of the Spiritist book by John DeRosa and Steve Shepard, Spiritism in Your Life with Drs. Marco and Joyce Magalhães, Spiritism and the Gospel with Luis Sergio Marotta, Spiritist Education for Youth and Children with Bernadette Leal, Spiritist Music with James Marotta, Neuroscience and Spiritism with Dr. Vanessa Anceloni, and many more segments coming soon. Enjoy it all and nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
And now we return to our program.
Hello, dear listener. We have here with us Marco Magalhães, who is faculty at the University of Toronto. He's also a spiritist, and he has a lot to share with us. Thank you so much, Marco, for being with us and for your patience. How are you?
Thank you, Vanessa. I'm very happy to be here and, ready to see if we can build some knowledge today and share some of this interesting topic with all the listeners.
Yes, it's so needed. How many couples, Marco, they have a lot of trouble trying to conceive, and they can't, or they find that they have no other solution but to resort to fertility treatments, and they are confused, like, should we do it? Should we not do it? Is it possible? But before we begin that, Marco, we'd like to ask you, how is the Spiritist movement doing in Toronto? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Thank you very much for asking, Vanessa. I think, considering, the situation, here and everyone else, I think we're doing really well. We're working hard to spread the word and help everyone that's coming by and try to really hug and bring in all our Canadian friends here, and we've been having an overwhelming response of people coming in and just basically learning about it for the first time. And we've been trying to just do some outreach activities so we can actually show people what Spiritism is all about, which is actually helping others and being active on charity, right? So I think overall, I think it's a young group, it's a young movement around here in Canada, but still, I think we're doing extremely well, and we're very happy to serve, I would say.
Yeah, so Marco, it's very interesting. If people are there and they would like to contact the Toronto Spiritist Society, can you give them the website, please?
Sure. The website is www.torontospiritsocietyaltogether.org. So torontospiritsociety.org.
Oh, wonderful. So, Marco, we know Spiritism can be very consoling because it brings us a multidimensional perspective to life. And when we talk about reproduction, we learn in Spiritism that it's a law, a divine law that we shall fulfill. And we learn that we are not here in the flesh on a vacation. We're actually here to progress, and part of this progress is, welcoming others who need to reincarnate as well, right? So in this case, when does the spirit actually connect to the cell of the physical body? When does that first happen, please?
That's an excellent question, Vanessa. And the short answer is that there's a short answer. There's a bunch of explanation that follows that. So the short answer is that connection occurs when the embryo is formed. Or basically, in other words, when the first spermatozoid and oocyte they meet together, they exchange their DNA. That time when that first pluripotent cell we call is formed, that's exactly the same time where the perispiritual body of the spirit is going to get fluidically connected to those set of DNAs. And from that time on, there's a long process that occurs until this whole process is complete, which occurs when the baby is born. So, I mean, we have, and Spiritism is very good to us, and all the spirits that helped us so much along the way, incarnated and discarnated, because they've been showing examples of that process in different books. And we've been having a blast, especially us that are in the scientific field too, and now reading Spiritism. We can find a lot of things that were so correct in Spiritism 50, 60 years ago, and now science is finally figuring out. So I'm just very excited about talking this topic.
Yes, it's so important. And so we would conclude naturally that since the spirit is connected to the first cell at conception, then if we purposely, eliminate, expel that life, what we call it abortion. We name it abortion as abortion. That is going to be the act of killing someone. Am I right?
It is, and I think it goes beyond that, because you're not only killing in the physical sense of the word, as most of us will understand. Like I'm talking to the general public now that will understand killing as killing a body, right? Of course, we're doing that when we're in the process of abortion, but most importantly, we're killing in the sense of killing an opportunity of a spirit to come in and learn and grow and have all these chances, these opportunities, and learn with us and help us. So it's much more devastating than actually just the fact of getting an interruption of the gestation, goes really beyond, and there's like this shattering repercussion that occurs in all these reincarnatory plans, in our plans too. So it really, in the end, we're really it's a despicable act, and certainly if we had an idea of how devastating that is in the long run. So I'm talking about spiritual life, not only physical life. Because for physical life, a lot of people will give excuses for it, right? And they'll find ways in their own minds to justify what was done. And that's very easy to do when you're incarnated. But when you understand that process from a spiritual perspective, so in other words, you expand your vision beyond this life, then if you can see that, if people can just see that what they're doing, they would never do it, I think.
Exactly. And Marco, we're just saying this without judgment. We're just talking about the laws of life. We're not judging anyone because we know in previous lives we didn't know this knowledge and we probably incurred in such errors. So, but we're just saying that the laws of life are just that. If we commit abortion it's not a therapeutic medical abortion, it's something that is not really needed, then we are considered somebody who is going against the divine law. It talks about repercussions. So let's talk about the mechanisms. Anything we do, we know in Spiritism, it's being recorded, registered in our spiritual body, the perispirit, in our minds. Is it possible that when we commit abortion, or sometimes men force their partners into abortion, in that process, are we also lesioning our own perispirit?
Oh, certainly, and I think that's one of the points that I was mentioning before, is that and as you said really well, like when you think about action and reaction, so everything you do, there's a proportionate reaction that occurs. So when this is related to suggesting or forcing someone to do something bad, or like an act, for example, as abortion, certainly that energy that you're projecting, that intention will be reflected back on your perispiritual body. And if we were able to look at ourselves without this material cover of the body, physical body, and see our spiritual body, then we would be able to see all this deep wounds that we created, basically, because of our own actions. So I think even our criminal code is changing nowadays to suggest, for example, if you're not the one doing something, the action, but you're kind of telling or coaching someone to do something bad, you're also culpable in a similar way. And I think that really reflects the spiritual and the divine laws, right? Because in the end, we're doing something really bad.
Exactly. And Marco, we're talking about the need of understanding the laws of life so we can live much better. And now, as we're talking about abortion, we know that sometimes women, we're talking about the possibility of conceiving, and sometimes they get pregnant, but they have miscarriages. And there are many different facets to miscarriages, and Andrea Lewis addresses them in the book Action and Reaction and other books. Can we discuss a little bit about the spiritual behind the scenes of miscarriages?
Yeah, that's a very good point too, Vanessa. And I think we could spend a long time just going over those examples, which are incredible. But in general, just to make it as simple as possible for people to understand, there are multiple reasons or possibilities why an spontaneous abortion occurs. And very often, particularly in early pregnancies, there are not even a spirit attached to that embryo, and that's well reported in some of the books.
Yeah.
And that happens also in for example, in vitro fertilization. Sometimes some of the embryos that do not progress, they actually do not have spirits attached to them, and that's also something that's very common and very well explained spiritually. Now, there are certain situations where pregnancies will develop and with a spirit attached to them to later term, and then they will come and then they will end abruptly for some reasons that sometimes, most of the times, are beyond our control. Sometimes they are under control. For example, if we're living a life that is impacting the pregnancy, and we end up stopping that pregnancy because of our own actions, then it is an indirect type of abortion, because you're not directly doing, but or intentionally or not, or consciously or not, we're directly affecting that. So that will be another example, for example. And there are many others. There are spirits that are coming with this particular role of going through the process of gestation, but not fulfilling the whole life, and that's part of the trials of both mother and son. So you see, there's like numerous examples out there that would explain why an spontaneous abortion will occur along the course of the pregnancy, basically.
Yes, and we know that, as Kardec mentions in the Spirit's book, oftentimes the loss of children, including the loss, like miscarriages, may be a trial, a test for parents, right? Especially for the mother, but for parents in general, because it's emotionally very challenging, right, Marco?
Mm-hmm. And I can speak directly to the heart of people going through this, because I've been there, and that happened with us multiple times. And I can tell that reading at that time, I was reading every single example of that in the Spiritist literature and in medical literature. So I was able to combine a lot of things, and that helped me dramatically. But it is a trial. And I understand now, I'm thinking on a very personal note here, I understand today that everything that I've been through, now today I have a very healthy, active son, and I'm very happy for that. But I understand that the way I see parenthood today changed dramatically because of the experiences I had with abortions before. And I think that was part of my learning as a spirit. Now, and I could see how today I'm certainly looking at parenthood in a completely different way, given a lot more respect, and I'm very grateful for it, and I can see it very differently, instead of just taking it for granted. When probably before, I would just take it for granted, like I'm a dad and this is what happens. It's physiological, men and women, they get together and they have sons, right? That's like a physiological, scientific approach to things. Now, when I'm looking at the spiritual now, having lost many babies before, now I can see it in a totally different way, and I can see that how I grew up with that experience. It was a trial for me, and it was a growing opportunity for both me and Joyce. So, this is like a personal note, but just an example of how things happen. And I know that probably and likely I've probably done something really bad with kids before, and I've probably been, that's part of my trial. So this happened for me to learn how to do it right, basically.
All right, and keep trying over and over again. That's beautiful, Marco, and we thank you so much for, sharing this personal, giving this personal touch to the listener here, because we know it's not easy and simple. But would you say that Spiritism was of the essence for you and Joyce to go through the challenges of miscarriage and never give up and keep trying until you got to receive the beautiful Daniel into your lives?
I think it was fundamental. I think, to be quite honest with you, Vanessa, I don't think I would be able to manage this if I was not so much into Spiritism, if I was not reading so much and believing and doing my best to incorporate what I read. And I think that's part of the whole process. And I can give you one example. So when I was reading, I remember at that time I was reading the book Planetary Transition by Divaldo, and Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, which is the spirit. He writes in a beautiful way by I don't remember the chapter exactly, but like halfway through the book, he writes about, for an example of a couple that was that they decided to come to this incarnation to have miscarriages, not because they needed it, but because they wanted to help spirituality bring these spirits so they could adjust to this experience. But they were only planned to come in during gestation, and they would partially through gestation, and they would not fulfill the whole gestation. So they would not have an incarnated life as we see today. So all this group of spirits were supposed to do this, and they needed a couple to accept it, because it's so challenging for the couple to understand this. And this couple accepted, and they came. Of course, they didn't know about it because of they lost their memory from the spiritual experience. But one of the mentors in the book come to their house and tells the story that, this is what you're seeing here is like a blessing from above, that this evolved spirits incarnated and they're doing this amazing role. Now, reading this, going through the process, I'm like, gee, there's so much behind this. And if you believe that God is perfect, as we know it is, and if you believe that, if you ask for help, help will come if you do your part, then automatically you take that weight off your shoulder and say, you know what, I'm ready for whatever it is, because likely I enlisted for this, and this is what I'm supposed to get, and so just do it, right? So this is how I took it with choice when I was going through this, right? So, and if it wasn't for Spiritism, quite frankly, I would have never, ever went into that route. I would probably probably crashed and burned in halfway through and say, I'm done with this, right? So, because it is overwhelming, right?
Yes, and I thank you so much, Marco, for spontaneously sharing your personal experience and for clarifying so much to the listener as well by bringing your own experience. But from you touched the subject of reincarnatory plan. Some people say spiritual contract, whatever term we use. In Spiritism, we say reincarnatory plan. Before we reincarnate, we have a plan. So, do the spirits tell us that for every life that is reincarnated or incarnated, there is a plan for that reincarnation or reincarnation?
Yes, it's a good point, Vanessa. Yes, for everyone, because if we understand that we're really the heirs of our own inheritance, in other words, like we are dealing with the consequences of actions that we've created. So by naturally, every time we've come back, we'll need to set up a plan on how to deal with this, with the situations that we created. And how can we take advantage using the supreme mercy from God and from the Spirit trying to help us? How can we use that plan to better ourselves according to our capabilities? So, but now, in the other hand, that is only part of it, because every plan is different. There's no, and Kardec is very clear about it. The Spirits answered very well. And then Andrea Luiz comes back and backs that information up really well, showing to us, listen, there's no such thing as like one recipe fits all. Like, because every individual is unique and every individual has a history, thereby everyone will have a very different incarnatory plan that will fit to their necessities, right? And that could be as varied as one can possibly imagine. So that's why also Kardec tells us, and the Spirits are very clear also, saying it's not up to us to try to come up with explanations of everything, like, because this is what's happening because probably that happened before and I've done that. No, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what we've done before, and that's why God is so good about erasing our memory when we come back. Because what we have to do is do our best and follow the divine laws. Like, love one another. Just do it. Like, stop trying to figure out things. And I've been seeing that very frequently in Spiritism, especially recently, talking to people. You see some will try to come up with this very amazing theories and explanations about things that are happening. And I'm like, guys, seriously, let's be simple. Simple is perfect. So let's just be simple and do whatever we have to do. And that's pretty much what Spiritists tell us to do. Like, follow the divine laws, do your best, and go ahead. You have the whole existence ahead of you. Just do it, right?
Exactly. Thank you so much, Marco, for that clarification. Now, couples try as many times as possible. Sometimes miscarriages happen or conception doesn't actually happen. Then they try the high-tech pathway that medicine is now offering which is fertility treatments. The first question that comes to mind to many people is it wrong to try these new medical advancements in order to have a baby? Is that in any way a problem?
Vanessa, I think that's one of the things that I like to talk. That's probably one of the most interesting things, and I like to talk a lot about it because for centuries we've been taught that science and whatever scientific technological advancement, by definition, it doesn't matter what it is, by definition, it is against religion or God. That's what we've been told for probably a few thousand years. Nowadays, we're finally breaching through that cloud and realizing that technical advances are actually brought to us because God allowed us to have that, and because we are into a developmental stage that we can take that technology and use it for the good. Mm-hmm. So, considering that, then, by definition, any treatment that will help another spirit come to this planet and be helped and have his life and grow, but it is in God's divine laws, you're actually doing exactly what you're supposed to do, which is help another spirit. And you're going beyond. So you're doing more than is expected. You're reaching a technology that's here available to us. Because spirits came and incarnated and brought that technology, and it's all because God allowed us to have that. So basically, we're in that stage of evolution that we can use that technology, and it's good, it's beautiful, it should be done. Now, of course, ill intent in anything is bad. So I'm talking about in general, if someone's trying to bring life with good intent and help, that's always a blessing.
Exactly. So, as you said, Spiritism is good friends with science, and it walks hand in hand with it. It's not like opposite, because many people, Marco, when they become spiritual, they are against science, like many religious people, and it's the opposite road that Spiritism takes, because Spiritism, as you said, embraces science, knowing that it's taking care of figuring out the laws of the material plane, whereas Spiritism is focused on the origin, the destiny, the nature of spirit, and the interaction with the corporeal world. How can we ever dismiss science? Now, Marco, the next step, since a couple, let's say a couple just absorbed the fact that science is a blessing, and fertility treatments can be a blessing for them and for the spirits who need to reincarnate. Now, there are many ways of going through the process of fertility treatments, and there are many steps as well. And in those steps, people or couple can be very overwhelmed because they need so much discipline to go into every single little moment and get into that anxiety as well and dealing with it. It's not easy. Can you tell us a little bit about, the scientific steps of IVF, the hormonal treatments, etc.? Can you tell us so we understand a little bit more about what it is?
So in general, I can summarize in a few steps. So basically, the first step is trying to determine a cause for the infertility. And that itself it can be a quite lengthy process and involves multiple testing. And the testing involves both the male and the female. And they will assess, for example, for the viability of the sperms and the oocytes. They'll evaluate metabolic signs from both of them, genetic abnormalities. So everything will be analyzed carefully. So we have like a baseline to understand why things are happening. And there's like ultrasounds involved and a different number of other things. So if we figure out a specific cause, and the cause is treatable. So the treatment of choice will be just basically to assess and treat the cause. And that can occur many times. And many couples can actually, have a normal pregnancy just based treating whatever the cause of the infertility. In many situations, the cause is figured out, but there's no particular treatment for that. And that case will go to the steps of in vitro fertilization. And in other situations, there are no causes found. And those are the most complex cases because since there's no cause, then we have to go through a systematic approach of trying a stepwise model. So basically from the more simple and less invasive to the more complex, more invasive treatments. So going on that line, basically, the more simple and the less complex treatment will basically just to induce ovulation on women and try and make sure we measure the levels of the hormones, measure the periods, know what are the most effective dates for conception. So that's like the less invasive, more common way of doing this. And there are medications involved, there are hormones involved, and that could be very stressful too because just to give an idea for the listeners, so the patient going through that process will have to go basically every day, measure hormone levels, have an ultrasound done. So it is very complicated. It is not as simple as people sometimes say. It is actually a very complicated process. If that's normally tried a few times, and if that is unsuccessful, then we go to the next step, which is basically collecting the oocytes and the spermatozoa and forming embryos in vitro. Basically, what that all means, basically, you get those two cells, and instead of allowing them to fuse inside the body, they fuse outside the body. That's what we call in vitro. That's the old term because originally it was done like in a glass petri dish, right? So that's like an in vitro. Well, that's why the in vitro comes from. So basically, when the embryo is formed, they're selected by viability. So some of them, they're allowed to grow to a specific stage where X number of cells will be divided, and they're reassessed for viability. If they're fine, they can be reimplanted or not, and then that's the time. They can be reimplanted fresh, or they can be frozen and reimplanted afterwards. So that's the whole process. Again, very complicated because even after reimplantation of the embryo, there are multiple rounds of blood tests and ultrasounds that have to be done to assure that the process is occurring normally. So basically, that's I would say like a summary of the approach of infertility at this point.
Yes, and that's a beautiful summary. And Marco, I know several friends who went through the fertility process, and they had beautiful children, usually like more than one, but they are doing well, they are healthy, and it was worthwhile. So we're telling you, dear listener, that if you tried everything and you need to go through this route, patience and persistence. After all, we've been through many lives in which we were impatient, we wanted instant gratification, and now life is calling us to exercise new virtues, which is required actually for parenting, right, Marco? We need a lot of patience.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of, no matter how cute they are, how angelic they are, we need a lot of patience, right?
That's correct. And I think patience is certainly, one virtue that we learn.
Yeah. And Marco, now we have a few questions that our dear friend Leticia Klausner, who is the Vice President of the United States Spiritist Medical Association, or Medical Spiritist Association, the SMA-US, she is here with us, and she has three major questions. At this very moment, I think they are appropriate because we want to know the behind the scenes of, the spiritual take on it. Because when you're doing these in vitro fertilizations, there are often several embryos. And first question she asks, do all embryos that develop during fertility treatment have a spirit attached to it? And then
the answer
I would.
yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
So,
I mean, she has two
right.
more questions, but you go ahead.
Right. So that's a good question, and that's been in debate for quite a long time. I'm not the bearer of all information in the universe. I just want to make that very clear. So probably, likely, there's way more than I need to know. But based on the information I have available now, and for examples that come from planetary transition itself, which describes the case of in vitro fertilization from the spiritual perspective. So the answer is no. Not all embryos have spirits associated to them. And the reason why we know that, for example, one example of the planetary transition, they are incarnating, they're facilitating the incarnation of two spirits that are coming from Alcyone. These spirits had to have a very particular set of genes and physiological organization for them to incarnate because of the type of evolution they had in their perispiritual bodies. So the process was a little bit more complicated than a spirit who already had a history incarnating on Earth, basically. And, that's a long story. We don't need to go to that much detail because that in itself it's another program probably. But the spirits select two embryos only to be associated with the spirits. And they only basically attach the spirits to these two embryos, and the two embryos are used. So that's the example they have in the planetary transition. Now, there's another question that follow-ups on that. So what about the cases where the embryos are frozen? And I think, again, there's a significant amount of debate on that. But considering that the plans of reincarnation are perfect, and that's what we have to start with, there's not going to be a spirit on an embryo that's not going to be used. That's by definition. So when the workers of the reincarnatory planning and the geneticists from the spiritual world are coming in to organize that process, they know beforehand which embryos are going to be used, and they allow the spirits and the technicians from the spiritual world to mentally select which sperm is going to reach through the oocyte and get fused to the oocyte. So they know which embryo they're going to use, and they're only going to have the association with spirits with the embryos there. And I think that's something that's like the baseline we have to work on our discussions. Now, can we have variations within that processes? I would say likely yes, but we don't have enough information to go beyond that. That's what I would say without making up information, basically, just basically on what we know so far.
Okay. Now, Marco, Leticia Klausner also asked two questions that probably could be addressed at this very moment. Would there be a spiritist recommendation on what should be done to the embryos that are not going to be transferred? And if you have many embryos developing during the treatment and you're not going to be able to use them, even if you wanted to try another pregnancy, for example, she says 10 embryos, what should be done to the embryos? So how should we, what should be done?
That's a good point. And as I said, because we're looking at this from the incarnated perspective, and from the spiritual perspective, we know exactly what's pretty much going to happen. So we know, for example, if we're having one embryo used now and there's 9 others, let's say, and there are no plans for another embryo to be used from an incarnatory perspective, from the incarnatory planning. So there are no spirits associated with those 9 other embryos. And now the question between disposing and freezing them, that's really debatable. If you believe that there are no spirits and there's no chance of that actually being viable, then I think we can probably discuss quite a long-term discussion on what to do with that. Now, if we have plans, even unconsciously, let's say the mother says, no, I don't want another pregnancy. But indeed, she's going to receive another baby. She doesn't know it consciously, right? So we're talking about spiritual plans. Then likely that embryo has already a spirit that will be attached to it, and it's just waiting for a chance for it to be used. And the other ones do not have spirits associated with them. Now, this is all based, like I said again, on the little information we have available in the literature today. And I think we'll know more about it when time comes.
Exactly.
That's how I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember as you talked about the debate, and I agree with you, it's still being discussed because that we are in process, right? There is a process of getting to know more information, Marco, right?
Exactly. So basically, I think from what we know today, the embryos that are going to be viable within their reincarnatory plans will have spirits associated with them. The ones that are not going to be used will not have spirits associated with them, and that's pretty much as far as we go at this point. Now,
Marco, there is one thing I've heard a discussion about the possibility of having suicide spirits, former suicide spirits, connected to those embryos that are frozen as an expiation process. It's a possibility, right?
I think Vanessa, like I said, I think there's so much more to be learned on that topic. And if I take it from my perspective only, and I'm not really representing spiritism here, I'm just talking my perspectives that there are likely multiple opportunities to use those embryos in different ways, like you said, for example, suicide spirits, or like an ovoid spirit, or something.
But let's put a pause here, Marco. Put a pause here, just for a moment, please. Let's share with the listeners, because we're living in a planet that is in a transition. If people go to the Gospel According to Spiritism, they're going to learn that there are several different levels of planets, because planets evolve morally, physically, and our planet Earth is evolving. It's evolving from the level of trials and expiations or atonement to regeneration. Then it's a transition to happy worlds one day, maybe in a million years, I don't know. But we know, since we are in a planet that is characterized by tests, trials, expiations, atonement, as you said, there are many different ways in which we can learn lessons to grow. And what would be the underlying reasons why a suicidal spirit would be connected to a frozen embryo?
Well, I think.
What is the lesson there?
Well, yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm certainly now extrapolating a little bit on my understanding of this. I'm just, but I would say that understanding how important life on Earth is for our evolution is certainly very important for a spirit that threw away that opportunity before. So that would be a suicidal spirit, and we know that in the literature, now going back to what we know, basically on the literature, we have examples of that. For example, Giulio in Between Heaven and Earth by Andrea Luiz, which is an amazing example where he he committed suicide, and then he's incarnated, and he has the physical problems that were still associated with his intoxication. And there's a very good explanation of how that comes back at him. So he would basically use that new opportunity just to learn how important life is, so and how to deal with those problems. Now, for suicidal spirits, and as I said, any opportunity for them to realize that this is really a blessing from God that we have, so we can actually use this opportunity to help others and help everyone and grow. And I think any opportunity would be valid for them to come back and learn that. Now, the ways of doing that, I sincerely cannot come up with, so many examples possible, because all I know is what we read in the books, but there's likely thousands and thousands of other ways because spirituality, God, we always use any opportunity to make us better. Any opportunity. So, really, it's really individualized, and I wouldn't disagree that's possible that a suicidal spirit would be linked to an embryo which will not be used. I think that's totally possible. Although I've never really read in fact that happening, but I'll be on board on that to say, hey, that's very likely.
Yes, and I know there is another facet that you mentioned, the possibility of these embryos being used to help the rebuilding of the spiritual body, the perispirit of spirits who became an ovoid. I know we don't have, probably we'll dedicate another program to understanding vampirism and ovoids, etc. So we'll leave that for here and now. We want to open another important question before we go to the break. Marco, nowadays there are couples that are not, okay, I'll go straight to another point before I get to that one. I just lost my train of thought. So another topic, homosexual couples. Mm-hmm. They can go into in vitro fertilization. Do you think Spiritism has anything against it?
Oh, of course not. Well, we're bringing life to someone. It doesn't matter if what's my sexual inclination, or if I'm selfish, or if I do whatever I do. It doesn't matter. If we're doing something that will help enough. See, here's the thing. We're not doing this for us. And that's why we have to stop thinking. When couples are doing in vitro fertilizations, it's not for them, really. Like, we're doing this as an act of charity, too. And that's like the big deal, because we're doing that for that spirit to come to this planet, which overwhelms any of other reasons why we're doing this. Of course, it's going to be good for us. Of course, it's good to have a baby and have a family and all that. That's like our own selfish reasons for it. But the truth is, we're doing the most amazing aspect of our existence in this planet, which is giving life and giving an incarnation opportunity to another being. And does it matter who's doing it? It doesn't. Does it matter if I'm using someone else's womb to have my baby? No, it doesn't matter. And it's very well described by Divaldo, for example. Does it matter if I'm doing IVF to bring life to another baby and to help this baby? It doesn't matter. Now, problems arise when there are ill intentions behind things. And I'm doing an IVF because I have a blonde boy, for example, which is possible because we can select embryos genetically. Now, that selfish aspect of it certainly is going to tint your intentions. The baby is going to come the same way, and it's going to be a blessing the same way. But now, for your opportunity of taking that for your own growth, then you'll probably be losing it. So those are the things, the little caveats I would say that we can put into the story that will people could understand. But homosexuality and bringing life to a baby, beautiful. And I think I would just hope that people could love one another enough that will do anything possible to bring a baby to this world. And I think that's
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we have to take our hats, and you know her, Susana Simões, with her partner, with her wife actually. They not only got married, but they adopted 2 children since they were little babies, and they are raising them in such a beautiful way, beautiful family. And she's the president of the Floridian Spiritist Federation. She has been doing a great job, and she's like an example for us what it is, no matter if you're heterosexual, homosexual, but you take family seriously to the point that you adopt children. And that's another option, Marco. When we talk about infertility, we talk about not only trying to conceive through our own bodies within our family, but also adopting. So what is the Spiritist take on adoption?
That's a very good point too, Vanessa, because as I said, especially those who go beyond what was expected, not only, for example, trying IVFs or trying natural conception, now going beyond that and adopting a kid, which is, I cannot think another more powerful action of charity than that. Because it's so beautiful, and I know Susanna. She was here not just like a couple weeks ago, and I know that the struggles in life for someone who went through that through that road, and now reaching out and bringing another life. Most often, that spirit that you're bringing in is already kind of organized to come to your existence, to come to contact with your existence. And that is so well explained in so many books. And even if we don't read spirit, let's say we don't know anything about spiritism, we're just coming in, and I know so many people around me that have done that, and I can tell you very details about stories, but I don't think we have time for that. But I'll just give you one example. Like this couple goes into this place in Brazil. They decided to adopt. They've tried IVF like multiple rounds. So certainly they could not. It was part of their genetic organization, their spiritual organization. They could not have babies in this incarnation. So what they've done after many years, because this is a process, right? You don't decide to adopt in a night. This is a long process where you have to build up inside yourself the understanding and the responsibilities of adopting someone. So they went through that road. It's a difficult road. It's not as easy as it sounds. It's actually a very difficult road. So they went through that road, and then they went to Brazil, in this small town, like they didn't know anyone. They walk in, they looked at this baby, this child, and it's instant connection, up to a point that they walked outside and they didn't even say anything to each other. They just started crying and say, you know what? That's it. So now we know spiritism. So let's go back to the spiritual side of things. That spirit, the child, has went through that. She went, or I don't know if it's a boy or girl, but went through that route of. She needed it. The child needed it to go through that orphanage, to learn that process, to go through that. And the parents needed that too, the process of trying to have conceiving, learning from that opportunity, building up inside themselves this understanding of adopting someone, which is like this beautiful action of love. And of course they were planned to meet at some point. And this spiritually, the mentors were all organizing these meetings beforehand. So they would have a nice, well-designed plan for that to happen. And they, of course, as much as they could, without taking their free will, they suggested to us the route to get there. And everything went well perfectly. Everyone was involved. And actually, that child adopted was really part of the spiritual family of that couple. There's no doubt about it. Because there are differences between spiritual family and material physical family that we can talk about at another point. But that child was part of the spiritual family of that couple. And that's how the spirituality planned out our reincarnatory plan so that could happen. And at the same time, all of them learned a different lesson. How beautiful is that? I
exactly.
Think, and this is, this is how I like to see this. When Jesus came in and brought the message to us, people absorbed at that time 0.01% of the message. Nowadays, we absorb 0.1% of the message, which is probably 10 times more than people used to at that time. Now, in Spiritism, all the explanation I said about the adoption is probably 0.2% of what we should know at some point about the whole mechanism that's happening behind the scenes. But we're happy with it, because this is what we need to know at this point, so we can understand and we can do better, right? And that's how Spiritism is so beautiful, explaining these things to us.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And Marco, I recall when André Luiz explaining one of these cases in the book And Life Goes On, so the psychography of Chico Xavier, which people can buy at editayofamerica.com or at amazon.com, whatever they like. And there in the book, if people read that book, they will understand the spiritual take, as you're saying, of adoption. And they will conclude that no adoption is by chance. And probably the people that you adopt are closer to you than you ever imagined. And I know I have friends who adopted, and they say, look, they had biological children and they adopted. They say, I have a stronger connection with my adopted children than with my biological children. And only Spiritism explains that, right, Marco?
Exactly. Because, of course, you need to have a previous encounter with that couple to have that connection. And that's where Spiritism and reincarnation comes in and beautifully explains these things to us.
Yes. And talking about explanations and cases, Marco, as you know, and you participated helping in this big project, there are 67 cases of spirits that people who discarnate spirits, who communicated through mediumistic meetings with Kardec at his time. And he published all the 67 cases in the book Heaven and Hell, which we're celebrating 150 years of its publishing. And you can listen to each and every case for your instruction and for your, knowledge, and also fun, because it's fun learning these things. In the website of KardecRadio.com, just go to Spiritist Audiobooks. When you see the cover, Heaven and Hell, click on it, and you're going to be able to listen to the cases of happy spirits, middling condition spirits, suffering spirits, spirits who committed suicide, criminals who repented, spirits who are so stubborn they don't change their mindset very easily, and finally several cases of spirits who talk about the way they expiated in the form of reincarnation. And Marco, we talked about some cases here, and there are cases of those who do it right, who walk the right pathway, and they also came back to tell their story. So how about if we just listen to this 3 minutes of explanation, the very dialogue of the spirit telling us about his experience, and then we discuss a little bit after that, Marco. Is that okay?
The death of the righteous. In a communication given at the Parisian Society, a spirit transmitted the following message under the above heading. The death of the man with whom you are concerned at this time was the death of a righteous man, that is, a peaceful death, full of hope. As day naturally follows the dawn, the spirit life followed his earthly life without trouble or disruption, and his last breath was exhaled in a true hymn of recognition and love. How few are those who make that difficult passage in such a way? How few are those who, after life's illusions and disappointments, perceive the harmonious rhythm of the spheres. Just as when a healthy man gets a limb amputated but continues to suffer sensations as if it were still in place, the soul of one who dies without faith or hope is torn and afflicted upon escaping the body. It is cast into space unconscious of itself. Pray for such disturbed souls. Pray for all who suffer. Charity is not restricted to the people you can see. It helps and consoles the beings who populate the spirit world as well. You saw the touching proof of this in the sudden conversation of that spirit who was moved by the spiritist prayers you offered at the grave of this righteous man. It is right for you to interview him, for he wants to enable you to progress on the righteous path. Love knows no bounds. It expands throughout the space, alternately giving and receiving divine consolation. The sea seems to extend infinitely beyond one's sight. Its edge on the horizon seems to meet the sky, and one's spirit is dazzled at the magnificent spectacle of those two immensities. Thus, love, which is deeper than the sea and more infinite than space, should bind all of you, both the living and spirits, in one and the same communion of charity, thereby accomplishing the wonderful fusion of the ephemeral with the eternal. This was Spirit Georges. Thank you.
And this was a recording by our dear friend Luisa Maroda, who, by the way, is one of the hosts of the program every Sunday, Spiritist Awareness, together with Marco Magalhães, Joyce Magalhães, and many, many other friends. Every Sunday at 8 p.m., a new program on Spiritist Awareness. Everything you want to do deeply about Spiritism. Now, Marco, this is like a very brief summary about the death of the righteous man. What comes to your mind when you listen to that case and to those lines of explanation in the book, Captain Hill?
Vanessa, there's one line there that really, really touched me. Every time I listen to that passage or I read the book, and the line is, "Love has no boundaries." And right after that, it comes with the explanation that the communion of incarnate and discarnate towards collective evolution, basically, so we're all evolving together as one. I think, putting back into perspective, as we talked about so many things today. So we talked about infertility, we talked about homosexuality, we talked about so many things. So now, put it all back together, I can summarize it all saying love has no boundaries. Because the reality of everything we talked about today, of any treatments, of any adoption, of basically what we're all doing is what exactly we're supposed to do, which is love, active love. Right, which is, there's no boundary. So there's no boundary to me to say, oh, I can't have a baby. It doesn't matter. I can do an IVF. Oh, it doesn't work. Okay, I'll adopt. So there's so many possibilities for love to be enacted, for love to be played out. So there are no boundaries to it. And the only boundaries that exist are inside our own consciousness. Because if inside my own conscience I create a boundary, then of course, then my capability of loving has a boundary, period. And that's why Jesus came back to us and say, well, love your enemies. Well, why is it so difficult for us to comprehend that? Because we've created the boundary. We have our own boundaries for how much can we love. And what Jesus was telling is, no, you should not have boundaries of how much or who you have to love. You have to act with the sincere love and respect to any person in any situation, and do more than we're expected to do by the society. You have to do more than you think you can do, because there's no boundaries to it, right? And I think that line alone on that passage, we could probably have a whole show on it if you want.
Exactly, and we always do, Marco. Now, Marco, so you're saying, let's choose love, and as a spirit in the body of a woman, I want to share this with all the women around the world who are listening to us. Take the opportunity to take a child in your arms, because you're going to regret if you didn't. And if you can't conceive it yourself, do something or help other children, because I know many who didn't go through that route. They regret it later in their life. And I will say to those who are blocked by their husbands or their partners, selfishness or limitations, how many people come and say, oh, Vanessa, I want to have a baby, but my husband doesn't because it's going to change our life. Look, I'm going to tell you by the example of one person who is a spiritist singer and a speaker in Brazil, and her life is public. So I'm not sharing anything that is not already known for those who are in the spiritist home. Anna Riel, she's adorable. She has been to the United States a few times. She sings spiritist songs. And she was once engaged with this guy, and she said, I really want to have children, and I want to first adopt. She was quite young, and she said, I want to adopt first, and then I want to have children. But he said, no, I don't. I think I do. No, I don't. So they were in this battle, so she said, okay, fine. She broke up with him. She adopted this beautiful kid. And her parents supported her because they are amazing spiritist minds. And she continued her life being a therapist, being a spiritist singer, being a spiritist, very open-hearted person. One day, she was going to a spiritist meeting, like a big meeting, like I think it was a national meeting. Somebody introduced her to her now current husband. Together, they had 2 other kids, and they embraced her adopted child. Now they are 3 children. They have 3 children. They have a beautiful family, and her loving husband not only embraced the adopted child and had new children, but supports her very actively in her important role in the spiritist community in Brazil. So we would tell you, choose love, as Marco is saying. Choose what your heart is telling you, because there is a reincarnatory plane. We don't want to go back to the spiritual realm after that, knowing that we knew it all along. We had to follow our heart, and we didn't. And there were XYZ spirits whom we committed to give our love, and we didn't. So don't save love. If you have to save anything, save money, but don't save love. Love is here to be multiplied. Right, Marco?
That's correct, Vanessa. And I just want to add a line to those, because there's so many people out there that may be listening to this. And I know that it is difficult sometimes to reconciliate in your mind your decision to have or not have a baby, and so many things going around you, and the decision between adopting, non-adopting. As me and Vanessa said, love is always the most important thing. But if you cannot do it, and I'll give you a situation where, okay, the person is not ready to do these things, at least you can do many other things to help others. Right? So
or prepare yourself.
Prepare yourself, exactly. So work hard, prepare yourself by serving others, help kids, live with them, help. So by getting in tune with that scenario, you'll likely increase your chances of making a decision. I'm just saying that, read the Spiritism. That's another thing you can do. There's so many good information around there that you can actually apply. And I think that would be a message. So work on it, as we're a work in progress, right? So
exactly. You said it all, Marco. And I know it took me 41 years to decide to have a child, and I had lots of reasons, especially the spiritist commitment, which was very overwhelming at the time. So I decided to have a child at 41, and I don't regret a minute that I waited that long. But I never said, I'm never going to have a child, in period. I prepared myself, and I would say, as Marco said, work on it. And if you don't want to have it through your own means, as Marco is saying, reach out to others who are living. There are people in Mozambique who are being helped, and many kids who are losing their parents to HIV. They are orphans. There are many kids who are dying, or parents of kids who are dying in the genocide of the mountains of Sudan and need help. and everywhere and elsewhere in the whole world. So they need you, they need us. Let us reach out in every possible way and meet. Marco, would you mind if we invite you to wrap up our program in the highest tone with a prayer?
So I would like at this moment to think about the image of God. And looking at God as a baby in Mary's arms, at Jesus as a baby in Mary's arms, standing that beautiful light that was brought to earth, coming that smile of that baby, still live inside us. And may we all here, with the blessings of our spiritual friends, project that light into everyone around us, into our families, to our own babies, and the people that we don't know, the people that are suffering right now, the ones that were called here in Mozambique and Sudan, the ones that are just beside us. Let us spread that beautiful shine of love into the surroundings of our existence, so we ourselves are going to be immersed in it too. Thank you, God, Father, Mother, God, for the opportunity we had, the opportunity we have on a daily basis, for our life, for our understanding, for our love, for the ability we have to do charity. And may we all progress in life united with a love that has no boundaries, as we heard today. Thank you so much, and so be it.
Thank you so much, Marco, for your time, for your knowledge, for your help, for your love. And we hope to schedule that other program that you suggested for sure. All right.
Let's do it. Thank you, Vanessa. Just want to a notch down on the compliments there. I think, I'm very happy to share whatever I've learned. I'm still learning so much. Like I said, and there's so many questions that I have that I still can't really find the answer. But, I think we know what we need. And all we need, like we said in the beginning, is really to put our act together and start helping people and start loving, start doing charity and bettering ourselves. That we know, and that's the basis. So starting from there, everything's good.
Thank you, Marco. Next week, dear listener, Ana Moreno from the Spiritist Society of Joana de Angelis in California is going to be here with us talking about family prayer, and you're invited to join us. For now, we wish you lots of blessings.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.